in the long-term vision, we are merging humanity and technology and AI.
So like Ray Kurzweil's going to love this company.
Oh, 100%. It's even another version of interaction with the reality.
You guys are accelerating the singularity.
Imagine that you can do a deep brain stimulation, but without any surgery. And imagine you can store your memory somewhere in the cloud. We will learn about brain that much. We will create brain-computer interface that good that we would be able to upload our consciousness to robots. I think it's some of the form of immortality.
You can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
Source of truth for the Medtech industry.
Coexists with the prophets.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the Medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, $1 billion company. They had help up high, a lot of things.
The State of Medtech with your host, Omar M. Khatib.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. BCI has been a hot topic that a lot of people want to learn more about on the show. There's plenty of interesting companies out there. Today, I'm joined by Tetiana Aleksandrova, who is the founder and CEO of a really cool company called Subsense. So how they first got on my radar was first they raised a $17 million round. So, of course, there's funding announcements for that. But then when I went to their website, what really stood out to me is that they're going to be aiming to be the very first non-surgical bidirectional BCI. And I think that's really important because when we think about BCI, we think about very invasive approaches. I think when you are dealing with certain structures in the brain, certain pathologies, you have to have a neurosurgical approach. But there's other ways where BCI can be introduced and the public can think of it as a non-invasive, non-surgical approach. So Tetiana, thank you so much for joining the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much, Omar, for inviting me. I'm super happy to be here. Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. And before we talk about the technology, the market, and all that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? And what's your training like before you decided to start a BCI company of all things?
Of course. I'm happy to tell you that. Originally, I'm from Ukraine. I'm Ukrainian, and I got my education there. And guess what was my favorite lesson at school? It was chemistry. And I always wanted to become a chemist, but then somehow I decided to study economics. And then I did my MBA. And where I am now, I'm leading a chemistry-driven brain-computer interface company. So that is my background. And I started my way to today 7 years ago. And funny thing is, this is my second brain-computer interface company. So I can tell that I'm a serial BCI entrepreneur, which is basically not that much in the world. Yeah. So this is
you know what? You're the very first serial BCI entrepreneur on this show. So what was the first BCI company? What ended up happening with it?
Sure, of course. 7 years ago, I decided that I wanted to do something really, really cool, something very meaningful. I want to change the world, and all of that things somehow appear in my body. And I was starting to think of what would it be, and I was lucky enough to meet my ex-co-founder, and he has the same ambitions, and he also has the resources to do that. And we just started our first brain-computer interface company. It was completely non-invasive BCI, like a headset. And this company is still super successful. They're selling their devices all over the world. But then I decided, after 3-4 years later, I decided that I want to do something more. I want to go deeper into the brain, deeper into the science. And that's how Subsense started.
That's awesome. And you know what's exciting for that, at least my perspective, speaking from like the investors who come on the show and stuff, is that you have experience in a space that's very, very new. And what's interesting is that, I'm looking on your LinkedIn. So this past company was, as you mentioned, it was non-invasive BCI, and it used EEG and machine learning to solve some problems on enhancing cognitive functions, neurostim. So I'm wondering if you had to think about your entire experience and take one or two key lessons that you learned there, whether it's good or painful, and you're going to bring into Subsense, like what comes to mind?
Okay, there's two things that comes to mind. One, good, we're not that good. The good thing is that EEG works better than I've been told. I remember when we started our company, EEG plus machine learning. When we started our company, a lot of scientists told us that we're crazy, that it's never going to work, et cetera, et cetera. But then 2 years later, then came and say, hey, that's cool. Let's talk. Let's discuss it. So the first thing is that the technology works better than we expected. The second thing is not that good as I wanted to work for the application that I want to create. That's why I switched from EEG approach, from completely non-invasive BCI to nanoparticle-based BCI.
Interesting. And maybe that's a good place to start, which is when we think about like Subsense, what's the main problem that you guys are trying to solve? Tell us a little bit about the problem, the market you're looking to go after, and like why.
Sure, of course. First of all, it depends how long. What is our vision? Are we talking about like 5 years vision or 10 years vision? The short answer would be the following: that we are helping people with neurodegenerative diseases in the short-term vision. In the long-term vision, we are merging humanity and technology and AI.
So like Ray Kurzweil is going to love this company. You guys are
100%.
accelerating the singularity. Okay. So why is that important to push the humanity like closer to singularity? And by the way, just for people who don't know what we're talking about, Ray Kurzweil's famous book on the singularity is the idea that we're essentially fusing with machines. Technically, if you think about it, we're pretty much there because we're all walking around with an iPhone in our hand. And now that iPhone has like Chat GPT and AI and all this. But like from your perspective, like why is that important?
It's a great question. I would answer why is it important in the short term and in the long term. In the short term, when we're talking about medical applications, right? Right now, a lot of neurodegenerative diseases are treating very poorly, and we can become the partly replacement of deep brain stimulation. Imagine that you can do the same that you can do as deep brain stimulation, but without any surgery, and you do not need to drill the scalp, and much more patient would be able to use this technology and to treat their symptoms of Parkinson, epilepsy, and many other neurodegenerative disease. And if we're talking about our big vision, our goal, it's I would step back a little bit. Why, like about my childhood? I'm sorry for that. When I was a kid, I always wanted. I love life. I love life so much that I always wanted to live 10 lives simultaneously. I wanted to become a chemist, a model, an entrepreneur, and all of that together. And I believe that we're building it. We're building like our very long-term vision is about that. If we're talking about very, very long vision, like maybe 20 years plus, I can imagine that we will learn about brain that much, and we will create brain-computer interface that good that we would be able to upload our consciousness to robots, to external entities, whatever. And I think it's some of the form of immortality.
Interesting. Yeah. And what I love about that is that there's always this concept of living in a simulation, that there's like alternate realities that are existing on a ongoing timeline. So your thing is that we should be able to bring those and make those available to us right now.
I can imagine that. I mean, I can imagine that it would be possible within our lifetime. While you and I are living here on this earth, we can, Ray Kurzweil talk a lot about making our active life longer. But then his recent TED talk was about that we maybe become younger. But another version of that is that we will not die, because if we can upload our memory, our consciousness, our feelings somewhere else, then we're not dying. It's an immortality.
It's an amazing thing to think about. So getting a little bit more technical with you. You guys raised this round, and by the way, congratulations, because I believe you also were named the 2025 Medtech Breakthrough Award winner. So a lot of really great traction, a lot of recognition is fantastic. Your technology, you describe it as a nanoparticle-based brain-computer interface. Can you explain what does that mean when you say nanoparticle based?
Sure, of course. let me first tell you why we decided to do a nanoparticles and not just invasive or non-invasive stuff. As I said in the beginning, I was developing completely non-invasive BCI, and I realized that the signal is that noisy that when we're talking about that vision that I just described, unfortunately, I do not believe that it's possible with this signal to get there. But when we're talking about invasive brain-computer interface, it's still a surgery. It's a huge limitation for the wide audience. And together with my team, we were discovering for a year and a half, how can we get the same accuracy than invasive brain-computer interface, but make it non-invasive? And we found out this idea of nanoparticles. That's not something that we just came up with. We read a lot of articles. We talked to a lot of different professors, universities, labs, like you can't imagine, like maybe most of the people who are doing this, like somehow. And first of all, we validated that we're not breaking any physics law here, and hypothetically, it's possible. Secondly, we found a lot of different proofs, scientific proofs that we can do that. And I can tell you that 70% of our work, it's not that far from the product. It's more the transferring the technology into the product, something from academia to business. And so, yeah, we found out that basically nanoparticles, it's a very, very tiny things can come into your brain through your nose or through your blood, passing the brain-blood barrier, cover the certain area of your brain. We can lead them to the areas that we want them to be located. And then we can read the signal from the brain and stimulate it with a special device. So basically, nanoparticles become as an antenna for brain signal and getting back and forth.
That's amazing. So like when you do, and I see it here on your website, for those who are interested, by the way, you can go to Subsense -BCI.com. So essentially you're introducing this like nasally, so somebody would inhale. How long would those nanoparticles potentially like circulate, and what would that look like? Again, I don't want to get too technical, but I'm just very curious because it's a very interesting approach. And I think we see this in other forms of medicine, which is introducing some kind of particle solution or something to enhance the treatment.
Of course, it's a great question, because basically we can make them stay for a week or for 2 months, or not forever, I guess, but for a longer period of time. Right now, we are figuring out what would be the best use case for us and what would be the best timing to stay there. And it's connected with the regulation because, of course, we need to get an FDA. And so we're targeting right now for 2 months, but we will see later on.
Got it. And when you think about the you have various applications that you mentioned, but if you think about, let's say, the first major, we'll call it like beachhead market, what disease or pathology are you looking to go after first? What does that market look like?
Of course, in 2 years, in a year and a half, actually, in the end of 2026, we are planning to show how we can treat the symptoms of one of the neurodegenerative disease in mice. So we would be able to read the signal from the brain, to stimulate the signal, and to treat the symptoms of one of the neurodegenerative disease. Right now, literally like tomorrow, we will make a decision which disease model would it be. Right now, we're discussing that it's either be Parkinson or epilepsy. Probably two of this. I think more that it would be Parkinson, because the market is huge. There are so many people who are unfortunately have this and have so many issues with this disease.
Yeah, and I think what's exciting about not only the BCI space, but the non-surgical approach is that this offers like a really fantastic alternative for patients versus, let's say, a pharmaceutical route. And I think perhaps it might be shown. I'm not making a claim for you guys. I'm saying just in general for non-invasive BCIs that you can see the results of this rather quickly. At least some of the other non-invasive like BCI companies we had on the show, when they talk about the patients, they seem to have the effect a lot faster versus, let's say, pharmaceutical drugs. It takes a little bit longer. Sometimes you have side effects and all these different things. So I think this like new approach and option is going to be really exciting for patients and families.
Yes, 100%. We talk with a lot of doctors and investors who are investing in the different types of treating of Parkinson, and they're super excited regarding that, because if it would work as we expect it to work, and there are no reason right now that it would not, that would be a breakthrough in treating these diseases.
And maybe, and again, like just to alleviate you from any headaches from your regulatory legal team, but if we imagine the world where Subsense is being used, can you give us an idea of an ideal scenario, what the patient kind of looks like? What are they dealing with? And like when they use Subsense, what could their outcome look like in terms of what you guys are trying to move towards?
To be honest, it's very hard for me to predict it right now because my team would not like it.
Yeah, say in a perfect world, your vision. Maybe focus more on the vision. What could that world look like?
Yeah, of course. In a perfect world, imagine that and when I'm saying that we're going to choose one of the diseases, it means that we're going to choose it for the next year and a half. But it doesn't mean that we will not work with other neurodegenerative diseases later on. And in the perfect world, most of the neurodegenerative diseases that is the most common right now, like epilepsy, Alzheimer, I don't know, would we be able to treat these diseases, but we can treat the symptoms of these diseases. And people would just not feel the symptoms, and it would be stopped as soon as appeared. And also, we didn't talk about helping people with ALS, MS, with paralysis, moving their wheelchairs, moving their devices, help them to use their devices.
Can we dive into that a little bit more? Because, this is the one thing that I've noticed is that when you look at certain BCI companies, when it comes to movement disorders or paralysis, there is a need for a neurosurgical approach because you have to, go deep within the brain. I'm going to take a wild guess, but it seems like because you're using this nanoparticle approach, you're sort of bypassing that and you're able to get to those deeper regions of the brain without having to do invasive surgery. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. Yes. If we can get the signal there, and we probably will get it, then we can be a total replacement for any surgery approaches that is existing in the market right now.
Got it. Let me share my screen real quick. I'm going to bring up your website. I want to just get your sort of take on it. So, you have a nanoparticle here. You show the sort of, is it transnasal or nasal approach of introducing those nanoparticles. They're going to go within the brain. And then here's the hardware. Can you talk us a little bit more just about the hardware? Why is it designed this way? Specifically with the band in the back and everything. Can you give us a little bit of insight on that?
Yes, of course. To be honest, I will be super honest with you. It's designed that way because it's cool. We think because it's cool.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it too, because the thing that people don't talk about in med devices is that you have to make these things user-friendly and look cool because people are going to be using it.
Of course. And we're thinking this device would be used not just for people with medical needs, but for healthy individuals as well. And but this device should work exactly as we're planning it to work with the magneto-electrical nanoparticles and plasmonic nanoparticles that we are building right now, because it's two different types of nanoparticles, one for reading and one for stimulation. And the device should work with both of them.
And can you tell us a little bit more about that, on the nanoparticle side, just to educate us more, why do you need one for reading, one for stimulation?
Sure. So as we discussed in the beginning, that we are building the bidirectional brain-computer interface, and we want to read the signal and stimulate it back. To stimulate it back, we need first to read what's going on in your brain, then decode it, then know what kind of signal and where should we send back. That's why. And for different application, you need some for reading, some for stimulation. Now talking about what kind of nanoparticles is that, and how does they work? For reading, it's going to be a little bit technical. Stop me if you think that it's too technical.
No, go for it.
Go
for it. There are going to be some people on the show, clinical or investor wise, they're going to want to hear these. So go for it.
Sure, of course. So for reading, we use plasmonic nanoparticles. Plasmonic nanoparticles is gold-based nanoparticles, and it's covered with electrochromic polymer. The way how it works, imagine that I have a device on my head and nanoparticles already in my head, and device always sending near infrared light to nanoparticle that inside of my brain, inside of my head, and the light is coming there, and then the light reflecting from nanoparticles back with a certain frequency. and our device getting this frequency. But if there is neurons that is active next to these nanoparticles, the frequency would be different. That's how we know that is some activity next to the nanoparticles that we send on the particular area. Does it make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. The use of are nanoparticles being used in other areas of medicine in the same way? Did that exist at all? How did you guys figure this out?
Well, I can tell you that we talk to a lot of professors who are doing some researches in this area. And for example, right now for this particular nanoparticles, we work together with UCSC, University of California in Santa Cruz, with amazing professor Ali Yannick. And he has a background intellectual property that we use, and he helped us to we're creating basically together these nanoparticles, and he has a lot of work already been done that is useful for our final product. Yeah.
Fantastic. On the neurotech side, what's interesting is this is a relatively new area. And so when it comes to the regulatory pathway, you guys have raised this first round of 17 mil. So a lot of it's going towards the development of the product, the regulatory side. Can you tell us a little bit about the regulatory challenges that not just you, but most BCI companies might be facing?
Yeah, it's. I wanted to say it's easy. No, it's not easy. It's not easy, of course. And most of the brain-computer interface companies are getting the breakthrough device designation. And I think that we will go with the same path. We didn't contact a regulatory yet, but we're planning to do the FDA. I mean, we're planning to do this in a couple of months, even though we're not ready to submit anything because it's a very active development stage right now. But of course, we know how important it is to work together with FDA, so they know about us, they understand what's going on, and they can help us and provide with a clear path how to get through it easier and not to make mistakes when we can not to do that. But do you mind if I will switch back a little bit to the nanoparticle side? Because I didn't.
Please.
Yeah,
hey,
I didn't
this is your
explain.
episode. Yeah, your episode. Yeah, please go switch back.
I didn't explain how the stimulation parts work.
That's right. We covered the reading, but not stimulation. All right, go back. Let's go back to stimulation.
And this is completely different types of nanoparticles. It's called magnetoelectrical nanoparticles. And the way how it works is basically piezoelectric effect. So imagine it's magnetoelectrical nanoparticles, and we have a device, and we stimulate these nanoparticles with the magnetic fields. So these nanoparticles deform, and with their deformation, it's produce electrical signal to the neurons that is located next to the nanoparticles.
Without having to influence the ion channels within. That's really interesting. Wait, okay. For the audience that's watching on YouTube or Spotify, we got to break this up. So here we go. Here's a nice little video here. Okay. Let me share this for the audience. Okay. So this is really amazing because this is how your neurons essentially work. You have different ions, like say potassium is one. And when an electrical signal happens, these synapses release these ions, and then that's how these neurons are essentially activated. And what you're saying is that these nanoparticles that you have on the stimulus side are able to do this without having to elicit an exchange of ions or activating that ion channel. Do those nanoparticles themselves actually act as the ions? How does that work?
It shouldn't be a problem at all. And I can tell you that these type of nanoparticles actually has more researchers in the area. And for example, one of the lab in MIT also works with these nanoparticles, magnetoelectrical nanoparticles. And I'm not sure that I'm able to tell you the whole technical details about that.
But that's just an amazing thing. And what's interesting, so I'm going to say this, you're not, because that way you don't get in trouble. Okay. But if Subsense is able to really deliver on this mission, and whether it's Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, but once you figure out the way to essentially read these issues not only within the neurons, but let's say within networks of the brain, and then stimulate them, there's really no limit to what you guys can apply that to. So like I'll give a really interesting one is like people who might suffer with, let's say, ADD or ADHD, right? Or have issues with focus, and so there's going back to your mission, like your mission, you say you want to unlock limitless human potential, right? So there are some non-pathological things that people deal with, and they try and manage that either through medication, therapy, etc. And so this can be really like a key to unlock that level of potential.
I really love that you mentioned that, because it's exactly how we envision ourselves, as a platform with unlimited possibilities for different applications. And we're talking not just about medical, right? We're talking about cognitive enhancement for healthy individuals. Imagine that you can hack your brain. I don't know, like what kind of problem do you have? Like, I have a very bad memory. And imagine that you can store your memory somewhere in the cloud. Of course, it's not going to happen in 5 years. I'm not sure that it's going to happen even in seven years, but it can happen within our lifetime, because when we can put our nanoparticles everywhere in the brain, and we can read and stimulate signal from 2 to 10 centimeters into the brain, and the amount of different application,
that's amazing. Yeah, and I think this is on point in terms of one key trend that has happened since COVID, which is the general public has taken a deep interest not only in their medical health, but just their overall health. So you see like Whoop, Oura Ring just as like fitness trackers, right? And so people have become more interested in like, how do I optimize myself? Like me personally, I don't have any like mental health issues that are debilitating, but I can think of a few things that if I was able to access it this way, I would do it. I think right now, the way somebody like
what
me
would you
or
do?
a lot of, oh man, that's a great question. What would I do? I think the memory would be a really powerful one, because I read a lot of books. And so the ability to take a lot of that information and synthesize it, right? So like right now I do that with, let's have this conversation. Okay. Like right now, when I want to do something really interesting, I'll take a lot of notes and text and everything and feed it into a GPT and train it. But what would be better than that is that if that's something that I can do myself, because then if I'm able to synthesize and retain all this knowledge that I have, and then I'm constantly getting exposure to new things in life, knowledge, etc., I'm able to automatically like pull nuance and come up with better ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, that's all stuck within AI, and it's up to me to engineer the correct prompts to unlock that. But if that's within me, it's unrealized potential right now. That's online, and I want it to be within me.
Exactly. That's exactly why we're doing that, because we believe that humanity potential is huge, and we just need to unlock it. Because imagine if we just not type anymore, we just have everything in our brain. The typing is so slow, and sometimes like I came up with some sentence or email like boom, right, like a second, but I need to spend, I don't know, a minute or 2 or 3 to write it down. But imagine that you can do it instantly.
Yeah, and I think a great example of this is I see that by the way, I'm really excited for like young founders like yourself. You and I, it's our generation that's going to move Medtech forward, right? We're the next generation in line. And so part of that is storytelling online. I see you do a great job on your LinkedIn putting out content and really interesting stories. But sometimes like you'll have like, I posted a thing about an AI agent hospital, and a physician from Stanford had an issue with what I posted. So she wrote this like, long comment reply. I'm like, I'm not going to spend my time reading. So I literally like went into my GPT. I'm like, hey, look, like, here's the comment, like, here's the paper. What's a good reply? And he came up with it. And I just tweaked it slightly. Yeah, that's good enough. Makes the point. Done. Yeah. Versus in the past, pre-chat GPT, I would have to spend like at least 30 minutes of my day thinking
Yes.
about what am I going to say and like going into the
Yes.
article and pulling out different points.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So I agree with you 100%. Imagine like we live without ChatGPT like few years before today, right? And I cannot imagine my life without ChatGPT. It saves so much of my time every day. And imagine that using the BCI, it's even another version of communication, like interaction with the reality, with the digital world. It's a totally different way of living.
Yeah, and I was going to say what's interesting about that concept, Tatiana, is if you think about it, let's say 100 years into the future, right? Or something crazy. And
My
everyone
favorite.
everybody has access to something like this, right? So what are you supposed to do as a person? I think at that point it's, if everybody has access to this ability to have this knowledge, these memories and everything, then my ability to be, more competitive, etc., is just my proclivity to have experiences, to read more, to go experience things more. I have to start. It's almost like you're doing like Pokemon Go, but with data information. So I have to start exposing myself to new experiences, new ideas, new books, new things, all these things, and then I'm going to be able to like come up with very creative ways of solving problems in the world. That's how I think that the world could look like.
Like creativity, you would never believe, but I was thinking today about how our life changed with ChatGPT, and I realized that basically the knowledge, like the information, is a commodity right now. I don't need to. It's so easy to get the information right now and knowledge, and the main thing that you can do is to think, how do you use it? So it shifted a lot from the point of, it's very important, like how your memory works, that you remember everything, right? To the point that how do you use it? What is your EQ? What is your soft skills? I think that's shifting much more on that way.
I know, I agree. And I think like, if you think about books right now, there's a lot of self-development authors, and some criticism is like, oh, well, this information already existed. And I think a great judge of a book is like, one is like, is it able to distill information in a way that's actionable? And then do people actually act on it? So there's like a lot of great self-development books I've read, but they're like, it's too much stuff. I'm like, it's very difficult for somebody to remember all this and take action on it. So I think what's interesting is that right now, and I think this is why it's an exciting time in BCI, is that if you think about it 100 years ago in the past, about that early 1900s, this is the Industrial Revolution age. We have, the Ford factory, all these different things. People made billions off of oil, steel, etc. Now we're at the turn of our century, which is we're in 2025, right? And so it's kind of like the turn of the century, and it's like the AI revolution. So like there's all kinds of things going on. We don't know what's going to happen with all this stuff. And fast forward, like when I'm, I don't know, 100, it'll be, I don't know, like 2080 or something. I'm really bad with math on my on the go, but the point is like, we'll look back and be like, oh yeah, in the 2020s, like we'll talk like that, in the 2020s, AI started becoming more adopted. In the 2030s and 40s, people started, implanting BCIs, etc.
Yeah, I believe that brain-computer interface would be a revolution, like a huge revolution, because as I said in the beginning, I believe that it will lead to the different form of life. First of all, interaction with the world that surrounds you and with each other, and then it may lead to the different form of life. And I really believe that it's possible one day.
Absolutely. So just to bring it back and just cover a couple of things. So you guys raised a 17 mil. What are you guys like currently doing with that money? What's the next year or two kind of look like for you guys?
Yeah, actually we raised more. We didn't publish it. We raised 20.
Nice.
Yeah.
Somebody snuck in that extra 3 milli.
Yes. Yeah. And to be honest, a lot of funds right now approaching us, and because it's cool, this is the BCI 2.0. Because a lot of companies who are working right now, they're amazing company. I respect them so much. We're building the industry together. But I see ourselves as not just a company who build some applications. I see ourselves as the first BCI company who make a platform where you can build a lot of different applications. And as answering to your question, yes, we just raised 20 mil, and we started development with UCSC and with ETH Zurich. By the way, magnetic electrical nanoparticles are developed by a brilliant professor in ETH, Brad and Salvador. And we're working with them very closely. Right now, literally this month, we're opening our lab in Palo Alto. Company based in Palo Alto.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we will have our grand opening in September, but we are starting to work now, where we are gathering all of these nanoparticles that is developed together with our partners in our lab. We upgrade them, we create our own intellectual property. And as I said, in a year and a half, we will show in mice how can we read the signal from the brain, stimulate it, and treat one of the symptoms of neurodegenerative disease in mice. And then we will start our new round. But we're happy to talk with all investors right now, building relationship, update them, and being friends.
That's fantastic. And then for the rest of the year, I know that you're very early on, so you don't have a commercially available product, but are you guys attending any clinical conferences, any investor summits, if somebody wants to meet up with you?
Yes, we're attending a lot of different conferences. I cannot name you right now. I told you I have a bad memory, so I need to look at it. But I'm super available on my LinkedIn. I'm always checking it out. And any investor who wants to talk to me, to us, I'm happy to, or clinicians, I'm happy to discuss everything. Just drop me a message on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Really excited to follow along. And more importantly, I think there's a really fun episode. I'm sure the audience is going to have you back. Maybe it was something I should organize, find a few other BCI founders, and we can have a singularity style podcast and just kind of talk about the future and applications and stuff. So
I love it. It's my favorite topic. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, for those who are listening again, like if you know an investor that's interested in the BCI space, maybe a family office, forward this episode on to them. If you want to learn more about the company, go to subsense-bci.com. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe. Give us 5 stars. We're the #1 show for a reason, because of you, the listener. That being said, I'm your host, Omar Khatib, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who would really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.